Okay, this is a little one about man bear pig and global warming. I had somebody on one of my older videos make a comment, and I got on there and realized that hey, I haven't been notified of all these 30 comments that are on here, but there's one ranting guy, and he says that none of it's going to even matter anyhow. With global warming, we're all going to be underwater, and the end of the world's coming, and it's all going to blow up, and that's all there is to it. So instead of just typing out a bunch of stuff related to the issue, I thought I'd just do one and what my thoughts are on global warming and the issue. For one, we have an issue of fear mongering that goes on in this nation and around the world, and that's disgusting for just one of many issues. Now we look at this, and I just pulled up Al Gore, global warming. And the very first one is Al Gore getting slammed over false global warming prediction. This was 2 years ago, okay? Keep that in mind. But the one right below it is Al Gore live at a conference, and I believe that was the one that was in Copenhagen. And Al Gore warns polar ice may be gone in 5 years, and that would raise the sea level by 16 foot or more, that he had said on a couple of occasions going all through that. Okay? Now, it'll be gone in 5 years, but can you see it? It's kind of small, but that was 9 years ago. It's not gone. In fact, the latest NASA data says, oh, it's grown back some the last couple of years. And what they finally started doing is they correlated some data of how the North Sea runs and how that affects the cycle of ice, and how our warm current coming up off Florida all the way across and up into the upper Atlantic affects it, and how that same type of effect comes off the Sea of Okhotsk in Russia and kicks up right there towards Shimia and all the little islands, and coming off of Alaska right there and penetrating into there, and what variance that would make. And then somebody had a bright idea looking at sunspots and how that had effect of extra small amounts of radiation going on. And it looked like whenever the Earth leans a little more towards the sun and these sunspots are active, it seems to be a little worse, and it goes through these periods of it. And it goes through periods of sunspots too. And that's interesting. But what's also interesting is here we are at double the age that he said the world's going to blow up. And the ocean has really not even raised an inch. Yeah, and in fact, whenever it was that polar ice that kept shifting around, that was melting and non-melting. And in fact, I think in that one here, this one here, he actually mentions it, that they didn't talk about thicknesses and stuff, and that's real important. So, because whenever you look at Greenland and stuff, and the amount of thickness that's on it, that even though Greenland is just small, Australian almost sized there, but the amount of ice that's on it equals pretty much all the rest of it together. And that if it was to all melt at one time, that would be much worse than that over there and what it's currently doing, for we don't see much. Speaking of not seeing much, if this is the one I'm thinking of, and I don't want to get flagged, so I'm not showing this. This is where he was at a town hall 2 years ago, and somebody asked him the sarcastic question, but really wanted an answer. As a commercial crabber and working on the ocean constantly, if sea level rise is occurring, why am I not seeing any signs of it? I.e., the water level is the same on my dock as it's been. We've had no more problems. In fact, all the hurricanes that have been around lately aren't as bad as the ones that had been before, it's not seeming to build up, and all these things that you said were going to happen 5 years ago are not even in effect now, and I don't even see the effect that you said was going to be way surpassed. Why? He responded to the hypocrisy charge a couple of times and stuff, but it's not just him, it's media's global warming fail. Why is that? Well, because it's part of their fear mongering. They feel like they have to put an interesting thing out, you see. So that's why they keep making up these narratives like this. And of course, it's also geared strong because the government wants to charge and do all these things and find ways to spend the taxpayers' money and find ways to need more money and find ways to charge you more taxes and get more control over your life and say if you can or can't use these light bulbs and so on like that. And while I'm a firm agreeing on going to LED light bulbs, I helped pioneer it with saltwater aquariums and using them for that, and had to pick out the certain spectrums that recreated the sunlight, and not just at the surface but at depth in the ocean, and tried to do that. So it was kind of unique and different. But in that fact, a lot of things that go with the ocean, which covers more than 70% of the planet, had to do with a lot of things. And there's one thing that we used to have that we would help to feed corals with. And let me see if I can. Okay, guys, what we're looking at here is something kind of neat. This is literally somebody taking a drop of seawater and putting it under a microscope. And all these creatures, or all these blurbs that you see, some of them elongated and icicle looking on both ends, this banded thing, this pill-shaped one, this round thing with a blob in the center of it, these burbles over here that have a spurry shape to them. These are all what's called phytoplankton. This is in the ocean, and it starts the chain of life that's in the ocean. So when we were doing live coral reefs in captive environments, we're putting a lot of live rock in there, and certain stuff blooms out of the live rock, but you'd have to keep it going so it could make another series of itself and bloom out. And there's nowhere near enough water volume to keep enough phytoplankton blooming in the water, or even diatom algae and things like that, to help feed the corals to the point that you could. So we were getting all kinds of nutrients like oyster eggs and stuff like this, and copepods, and different type of phytoplankton in different sizes and micron sizes to help feed certain corals. And they started procuring them and dehydrating them, and then you would rehydrate them, usually in vitamin C and some other vitamins and such, and trace elements that are beneficial to corals, and then solubilize them in water and pour them in the water column and let them just blow around and let them filter feed it out of the water. And you don't do that too much, it'll start polluting your water, of course, but it helps out a lot. But one thing we had too was phytoplankton, and it was refrigerated, so it kept it in a dormant state, and they could also put it in extreme concentrations. And so it was not see-through, it wasn't to the point of syrup, but they did make a concentration that was not guaranteed to be alive, that was like a syrup. But they had live phytoplankton that was much thicker than tea. You could not see through this in any way, shape, or form. Very much green, deep green and stuff. And they had 3 of the major forms of phytoplankton that all corals use, and they procured those separately in curing vats because some of them will eat each other and so on. And so what they would do is procure them in separate vats, gearing and engineering it so it just fit the certain ones, and then cool them down to a dormant state, and then put them in this bottle in a percentage. You buy it, keep it in your refrigerator, because if you let it go bad, man, it goes rotten eggs. But keep it in the refrigerator, and you put in shots every few days, depending on your water volume and the load of corals. And no, you don't read what it says on the back, because they want you to put a lot in there, and they don't talk about Well, if you got a 250 gallon and you only have one coral, so you have to figure that in. And of course, I was kind of an expert at this type of stuff and dealt with it a whole lot. But neat as hell, what does phytoplankton do? Because, well, to get rid of carbon and our carbon output, and everybody's freaky on your carbon footprint and everything, how do you get rid of carbon? Well, there's a hell of a lot of ways to make it, and a lot of things, byproducts, end up making it too, so it's hard to really disintegrate away. But one thing that eats it and makes it go away is phytoplankton. It eats carbon dioxide, and this helps keep the ocean de-acidified, and it's blooming out. Now it's phytoplankton, and the things that are running around the water column eating the micro stuff of this size are the planktony things and stuff you see whales filter feeding out of the water, and maybe some of the bigger corals and stuff. And so there's a whole series of things that go together. But you could easily take ships and take this refrigerated phytoplankton and bottled wise and put it on these ships and have it dump out at a certain time, and nothing even real formal about it at all, as you're going back and forth. So really erasing your own carbon footprint while you were doing it in the ship, in a way, trying to, and in a way it would help eat phytoplankton out of the water. It will deacidify the ocean and get rid of the carbon dioxide and carbonic acid that helps to cause it. There's the effect they've figured in that phytoplankton and its effects gassing off through the ocean eats up 6 times the amount of all the rainforests there are in the world. And while there is the constant consuming and even on fire right now rainforest in South America and Brazil and so on, that's getting rid of what helps to filter feed our air out too, just willy-nilly, we can easily offset that by planting lots of other plants and trees and stuff, and try to repopulate Dust Bowl, Oklahoma area and stuff, and the areas that are going bad there. Feed off the Mississippi, put a pipeline in, do something. You're talking about spending trillions of dollars trying to do some kind of silly thing. Find something that's somewhat feasible and can help people. Farmers could feed off this, all kinds of things could feed off this, and you could make a stretch of life through there. You could make a couple of them that branch off of it, and then that Dust Bowl effect goes away, and it actually becomes productive, and it eats carbon dioxide and gives off oxygen instead of just baking and making the world a hotter place. But the other flip side of this entire situation, guys, is that we're due, and somewhat overdue possibly, for us to go through a next ice age where it pivots down. And a few times in the last couple of ice ages it's gotten hotter than now and less global ice. And so I keep telling people that they're freaking out about global warming, and we need to figure out what we're going to do about global cooling, because it happens in a rapid state. It seems to cause a lot of problems with a lot of animals. Anyhow, that's just the concept I wanted to put across, and how wrong Man Bear Pig was and still is. For he's put out other predictions just 3 or 4 years ago, and he's trying to do the same thing. And it's funny, if 5 years turns into 15 and it still didn't even pull off anything that you can show that there's even something really drastic happening, then why keep shoving your foot in the fire? But some people are thriving and living off fearmongering of people and delusions. But I try to cut through some of them. Really, this one's kind of out of my range, but then with my saltwater background and things that I know, it all works together, and perhaps even has a solution that sounds a whole lot more feasible than all this weird Green New Deal and some farcical idea that they've come up with. Peace.